Life's a really interesting thing. We have these paths that we go on through life, and they tend to be circuitous, I think, when it's meant to be. Have you ever had that time where you ran into somebody, you met them, you spent some time together, and you thought, man, this is a really cool person. This is somebody that I was supposed to meet. And then you don't talk to them for a long time. One reason or another, we move across the country, we have different things that come up, and then later you're able to reconnect. Well, not long ago, I was out to lunch with a good friend of mine who asked me, hey, do you remember Nakia? And I said, of course I do. This is one of the great men that I met over 20 years ago. And he said, I just reconnected with him. He lives on the other side of the country, and you two have to reconnect and talk. And so we did. And in this circuitous moment of coming back together, it was great to reconnect with my friend Nakia and hear a little bit more about his story. Through this conversation, I was able to hear more about his growth, his evolution, and I don't know, some 20 years later, look back and say, what an amazing evolution this man made. Think about it for a second. How many of us in our lives get to a point where we make a choice, we make a decision that we then think, oh, life is over. I can't recover from this. I can't come back from this. I'm sad, frustrated, angry, embarrassed by what I did. And yet we forget that everything that we do in life is one moment that we can then continue to write our own story. Now, I'm going to be honest with you today. Today's story is powerful. Today's episode is going to be life-changing for many of you because all of the little things that you tell yourself, all of the things where you say, I did this and so I can't evolve past it, are going to either melt away or they are going to completely blow up and disintegrate as you hear this story. Because what I can tell you is my good friend took a moment of his life and he used that as a springboard. He used that as the catalyst to totally change, transform his life, and evolve into an extremely successful husband, father, business owner, and just deepen his greatness as a human being. All of that and more on today's episode.
Welcome to the Evolve Podcast. Evolve your body, evolve your mind, evolve your soul, and evolve your tribe. And now it's time to disrupt.
And with that, folks, I want to officially welcome you to another episode of the Evolve Podcast. Somewhere lost in the mountains of Utah, I am Steve Cutler, and today my guest, as I referenced in the intro, is my long-lost friend and feels like a brother from another mother, Nakia Caesh.
Yes.
Nakia, thank you so much for joining me today.
Steve, what a full circle moment this has been. I mean, I cannot express the amount of like gratitude and satisfaction it gives me to be here with you, talking to you, like living this life and kind of like completing like a journey that we started so long ago together. It feels really good. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, my pleasure, and really is an honor to have you back on. It's been fun to reconnect, fun to go back through the history books and look at, what did we do together back in the day? How did we connect? What did that look like? And I can't remember exactly where we met. I just remember that we had worked together at a little pizza restaurant in Salt Lake City, Utah called Geppetto's, which unfortunately is no longer around, but I still run into the owner from time to time. Great guy, John Sinclair, and still connect with his family from off and on here and there, and had a great time with those moments of life, right? I mean, it was, I don't know. There's a lot of our listeners, I'm sure, that feel the same way, that there are jobs that you have when you are younger that you look back on and think, those were the good old days. And while I'm not one to look backwards and say those were the good old days, because I really enjoy my life and I enjoy what is and what's to come, man, those were the good old days. I mean,
Great day.
what a
Great
cool,
days.
cool space. We had some great friends there. We were able to listen to live music almost every night as we're slinging pizzas and, serving up pizza and beer to all the locals, serving up pizza and beer to the college students. And then I think you and our friend Nick, you guys started something new at Geppetto's that was pretty cool. We went from live music every night to, what was it? I think once a week you guys were doing poetry and slam.
Once a week, there was definitely some poetry shenanigans going on. I can't remember it being some of the best poetry in the world, but there was definitely some attempts to do some deep thinking and bring some energy and vibes.
There was a vibe to it. That's a great word to describe. There was definitely vibe. I remember, so, this restaurant was busy most of the time. And not that we were completely packed all of the time, but we were busy most nights of the week. But then every once in a while,
we really worked. We really got to it.
Yeah.
That was some honest times.
It was a cool space because it was about a block or so away from the University of Utah, and it had great pizza. In my opinion, it had the best pizza in Utah. I know that there's some other people that say, well, the pie is better, and the pie was like right around the corner. So they were kind of like the enemy of those of us.
Pie. The pie. Walking around those corners was something else, man.
Yeah.
What a nice little...
Such a cool little space, right? You could walk from the university down to Geppetto's. You'd walk past the pie and come and sit and, get a pitcher of beer and I think Wasatch, had their raspberry wheat beer was like the most ordered thing that I would serve, and so people would come in and get these big pizzas and a pitcher of Wasatch's raspberry wheat beer, and just have a great time. Students, there were some older folks that would come in, hippies, yuppies, you name it. Like it was the gathering place. And you guys brought something really cool to it when you talk about the vibe, where you started doing the poetry, because every night was music, except for the nights that you guys would do poetry ahead of time. And there was a little bit of slam in there. We're having a great time with it. And I mean, open mic poetry. It was so cool. Such a cool vibe there. I ran into... So some of our listeners don't know this, but, in my spare time, I love to draw, paint, create art. Some might know that because of some of our episodes that we've done where we talk about art with the likes of Al Rounds and Hillary Scott and some other great artists.
Right.
But I loved drawing and painting. So one day I had this idea that I wanted to do some stuff for the store. In fact, John, the owner, had asked me, he said, hey, could you do something? Could you maybe like a guitar, put the logo in there? So I did. I created this watercolor painting where it was this multicolored guitar with the logo in it. And he turned that into the menu. That was the cover of the menu. Used that for postcards that he would send out. So a few years back, we were chatting. I ran into him and his daughter, Whitney. And I said, you guys don't happen to have any of those old things, do you? And Whitney goes, I actually have a few menus. You want one? And so downstairs, Nakia, I've got an old Geppetto's menu with the painting that I did on the cover of it. Man. It's like one of my most prized possessions nowadays. Every once in a while, I'd pull it out and show it to my kids. I'm like, hey, your dad was famous. Not really, but he... At least his painting was hanging up in the restaurant, and it was on the cover of the menu.
How sweet, man. That is so sweet.
But it was such a cool time of creativity. I think, all of us were quite a bit younger.
I just remember being free and just having a great time and feeling safe around you guys.
Yeah.
Just living in a great abundant life at that time, man. I was turning over some very important leaves in my life at that time. Mm-hmm. Some super important leaves at that time. I was in Salt Lake City because I was studying massage therapy at the Utah College of Massage Therapy.
Yep.
Right. I was spending some time at the University of Utah because we had cadaver labs.
Mm-hmm.
There was a housing situation that the Utah College of Therapy provided for me. So I was fairly close to Geppetto's. So
Yeah.
it just made sense for me to walk down there and kind of work. And so that's where I was just cutting my teeth at, just learning how to live a beautiful and free life. It was an enormous time in my life. It was a time of just superior mental and spiritual growth, and I needed to be there at that time, and I needed that community that I had at that time. And I remember just soaking up a lot of love and a lot of grace that was shown to me while I was there.
Yeah.
So it was always good vibes. It was always good vibes. That was always the way that I tried to work, and I tried to lead my life at that time.
It's pretty cool when as we say on the podcast from time to time, as you evolve your body, mind, and soul, you'll find your tribe.
Yes.
Your tribe evolves as you do those other things. And so when I'm coaching people, I never tell them, "Oh, go out and find people and do this networking thing." Like to me, that's garbage. Just evolve your body, evolve your mind, evolve your soul. Your tribe will find you. You will attract the people. And one of the things that I loved about the group, the tribe that we had back then, was a lot of like-minded individuals who were just playing with creativity in multiple ways, right? I was still doing some art. My wife was finishing up her bachelor's of fine arts in art. You and Nick were playing around with poetry. Music was a part of this. We're working in this place where live musicians would come in. We're connecting with creative people. You're going through this combination of science and art with massage therapy school. I'm studying more on the fitness side, which to me is that combination of art and science. And so we found each other at a time that I think was a really, really cool time. And, it as life typically does, we tend to go in different directions for a period of time. In fact, Nick and I lost contact for a few years as he moved on and decided to go into law school. And then eventually he moved back to Utah, and here, we got reconnected. And I've actually had him as a guest host with us a couple times, and we did an episode with him. Talking about the death penalty, and really it was about death penalty, but it was about how does a person evolve their way of thinking, both politically, religiously, and just really as in general. How do you take something that could be a really hard topic and evolve your way of thinking by remaining open? And so we had that conversation with Nick, and then Nick has been a co-host, a special guest co-host a couple of times. So it's cool to see when life just becomes this circuitous path, and we come back to people that we had connected with before who are still on this similar life evolution. We all evolve in different ways, but yet there's a soul there that resonates, right? There's this creativity, this desire to continue to evolve as human beings. And I think that's part of what creates the magnetism, where we come back together at a certain point.
Man, I remember talking with Nick. Nick and I, we had this unique relationship back in the day, and we just every so often we connect, and we just have these really short but sweet conversations, and we share these photos, and we just take our time and we go back through memory lane. And I just so impressed at how Nick has evolved, man.
Yeah.
I mean, the lawyer that he has become. The lawyer that he's become, the man that he's become. His evolution is just shocking and surprising, and I just love to see it. And I remember when Nick first mentioned your name, the first thing I thought was, man, I can't remember him, but I remember the spirit of the man. I remember the spirit of this guy. I remember that this guy was a genuine guy, and that this guy walked me into some very beautiful doors. I remember you bringing me to Christmas.
Yeah.
I remember celebrating some things with you. It was an amazing time it was just an amazing time. And the way that we circle back in life and circle back into people's life. I mean, there's no such thing as coincidence that you have evolved into this person that is out in that is putting this type of material out into the world. I had no doubt. And so when he mentioned the podcast, I was like, wow, man, that is everything that we had talked about.
Right.
So many years ago.
Yep.
So many years ago. I mean, we're talking 1999, 2001.
Yeah, I think so.
I mean, this is before, this was before World Trade Center, definitely, right?
Right.
This
was
early.
Yep.
This was early. This was very formative times.
Yeah.
So we've seen a lot since we've seen each other, and we've formulated a lot since we've last seen each other, and that's why I'm here. I'm here because I just wanted to give you some insight into where I've been and how I've been living. I'm just so blessed to be where I am right now. And so I wanted to give your audience just some insight into my worldview, into who I am before we even start, right? Because we're going to tell a deep story today. And the story is going to be about domestic violence, and it's also going to be about gun violence. So we would like to get kids maybe that are within earshot. Maybe we should get them out of the room, or just wait to a later time to finish listening to this podcast. But I just wanted to give everybody that are sensitive to certain things an opportunity to kind of like clear out and understand that this is going to be, a very heavy conversation.
Yeah. Appreciate that. And we talked about that ahead of time. That for our listeners, I mean, this is a conversation and a story that is going to go deep into some of these topics that certainly are not for the ears of the youth, unless screened by a parent ahead of time, because the context of what we're talking about, I think, is really powerful and really important. And we're telling your story, your authentic story, as it happened, and the challenges that you went through and that you had to go through to become the man that you are today. So I appreciate you setting that disclaimer out there.
Yeah. Okay. So look, we put the disclaimer out there. We got everybody on notice. So now we're gonna go. We're gonna go there a little bit. But before we go there, I just want the audience. I just want people out there to understand my worldview as an American. I'm an American. I have that indomitable American spirit that cannot be quelched or smothered down easily. I'm a fighter, right? That's what this country has made me. That's what it has made all of us. We're all survivors. And it is time for us to look deep within ourselves, look really, really, really deep within ourselves, and understand that we have to begin forgiving ourselves first in life, right? So before you can have that body, the mind, the tribe, and that spirit to evolve yourself, sometimes you got to look at yourself, and you got to be real with yourself, and you got to forgive yourself.
Yeah.
That's first and foremost. You can't have anything in this life until you can forgive yourself. You can be naive. You can be blind to a lot of things.
Yep. Yep.
But until you forgive yourself, you cannot have certain things in this life. Period, point blank. And I've had some of the best things in life. I've had some of the best things life has to offer. I've traveled to Europe. I've seen the David. I've been to Florence. I've lived in London. I've been on the set of Star Wars. I've met some impeccable actors. I've been to some great places in life. I'm at a great place in life right now where I have my own business. I'm thriving. I'm living a pretty great life. I have a beautiful wife. I have a beautiful kid. Look, I would not jeopardize anything in my life for the way that I'm living. You understand? I'm not going to do it because I have a great life. I have a magnetism to where great people are attracted to me. That's just how I live, right?
Yep.
That's just the way it is. That's how all this was able to come full circle. All right. So I want you to really, really, really settle into, I'm a happy man. I'm a great man. Look, I'm a real man that's a pillar of the community type of guy. That's the kind of guy that I've evolved into. It's real. I'm out here on Cascade. I'm on the street. Like, people see me, people love me. I've done the best that I could do, and I'm gonna do great. And Steve, the reason why I'm here is because I want to do great. I want to do better, and I want to reach greater heights, right? But in able for me to do it, I feel that, number one, I have to tell this story, right? Because it's a cross that I bear, and I want to get it off my chest. And sometimes the best way to get things off the chest is to just sit down and talk to a friend, tell the narrative, and woosah.
Yeah.
I'm looking for the big woosah moment of my life, because I'm 49. I'm about to be 50. You understand? I'm 50. That's big numbers.
Yep. Yep.
That's big numbers, right? That's
it's probably halfway through your life at this point.
That's halfway.
Maybe.
That's halfway through my life, man. That's halfway through my life. And Steve, I'm committed not to live the next half of my life the way that I lived that half of my life. Mm-hmm. That's just the way that it is for me. And there's a lot of people that's out there with me. And if you're with me, let's go. Let's get to the goodness. You know what I'm saying? Let's grow old gratefully. Let's love on each other a little bit more, and let's start forgiving each other. That's my message. Steve, do you remember everything about me? You remember some things about me, but I don't think that you really knew what I was going through at that time.
Yeah, there wasn't a lot. I think when you and I met and we started connecting, we spent some time together. Like you mentioned, you came over to the house for Christmas. We had moments together at work. We had some moments outside of work. There was just, good times. But we had some good, deep discussions. But I could always tell that there was something underneath, a little bit more. There was something that was, whether it was pain, torture, or just some of the things that we were working through at the time. I could sense it, but it was one of those things that I thought, I'm not going to pry. We're having some good, deep conversations. We had some beautiful, beautiful conversations. In fact, I think I mentioned to you a couple weeks ago when we were chatting that you asked me one day, you looked at a piece of paper that I had, and you said, "What is that?" And I said, "Well, that's my mission statement. That's kind of where I want to go in life. That's my, that's who I am. That's what I want to become." And you said, "Let me see that." And that wasn't something that I would share with people. It was just something I would read, and I would kind of reset. That's like my compass of how I would, evaluate myself to my life. And you read through this and you had handed it back to me, and you just said, what do you mean that that's who you want to become? I said, well, that's what I believe my mission in life is ultimately. And you said, that's who you are. Like, that's it right now. And that was one of those moments that shifted me internally. It made me realize that from an outside perspective, what I had written down, even if it was that I was embodying that in a very small, very minute way, I was already embodying it. Maybe it wasn't the resonance or the magnitude that I wanted to ultimately, and that's why I continue to do what I do, of trying to help other people improve their lives, transform their lives. But that was a moment that shifted for me. And we had a few conversations like that, your depth, your wisdom would come out. But I had no idea what you were going through, and didn't until, maybe a month or two ago when we reconnected.
Wow. Yeah, man. So the whole time, listen, man, the whole time I was in Salt Lake City, I was there because I was on parole and probation.
Mm-hmm.
I was breaking the cycles of violence, the cycles of poverty, and just some very, very, very necessary chains that need to be broken in my life. When I was 16 years old, this was 1991, I shot and killed my mom's abusive boyfriend.
Mm-hmm.
And I have sat with that, and I have lived with that pain, and had endured that all throughout that process, all throughout my education process, all throughout my process of becoming a young man. I mean, shit, that was basically my initiation into manhood.
Yeah.
And I became a man all too sudden because of circumstances and things in life that were sort of out of my control, in my domain. It was a fucked up situation, man. And I look back at that situation, and I just have to always find ways to unpack it. Because what I can tell you right now is I'm turning 50, and I'm older than everyone that was in the situation at that moment.
Yeah.
My mom, her boyfriend, I'm older than all of them at that time. They were in their 30s, right? And I remember a lot. I remember a lot of pain. I remember a lot of violence and stuff like that growing up in my life. I just come from one of those places that it took a lot for you to survive.
Yeah.
Right. I'm from the city of New Orleans, and I'm talking 1991, like murder capital of the world.
Yeah. Yeah.
We were raised in a pretty vicious environment, but by the grace of God and by some hard work from my mom, my grandmother, my family, we were able to lift ourselves out of that place and get ourselves into a steady state. My mom worked hard, my grandmother worked hard, everybody worked hard, and everybody pretty much gave me the best life that they probably could have given at that time. And we're gonna elaborate on that some more. But the journey, Steve, the journey of pain, the journey of anguish, the journey of shame that I've carried, because I felt ashamed to tell the story. I felt ashamed to live my life because I've had this. There were times where I couldn't get certain jobs, times where I just felt like I couldn't exist there. I didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
There was times where I felt so downtrodden, and times where I just was so lost and so bewildered. I didn't know what to do. But Steve, the only thing that we can do is dig a little deeper and take another step, take another breath, and keep on moving. That's the only thing that we can do. And that's the reason why I'm here. I'm here because I want to tell a story to help, to motivate people to keep moving.
You know, there's a lot of there's some of our listeners, I think, that could resonate to say, hey, I grew up in a situation where survival was the number one thing. Some of our listeners won't. They don't understand that. They've never really had to survive. They grew up in middle class or upper middle class or beyond. And survival was not a thing. And so this idea of what does that look like? What does that feel like to wake up in the murder capital of the U.S. at the time, to have to think through survival? I mean, we're literally talking about a situation where you have people just trying to live, just trying to survive. And in order to do that, they feel like they have to do things that you don't have to do at different stages of protection, right? So if I have a house, I grew up in a middle-class family, I'm not so much worried about survival and feeding my family and protecting my family. And so I don't have to worry about attacks from outside, right? But if that's not the case, and I'm living in an environment where that is the case, then it's a totally different scenario. And so I think that there's some of our listeners that will really resonate with it. There's some that will be curious to say, oh, let me put myself in that space mentally and emotionally. And that would be my challenge to everybody, is put yourself in the space mentally and emotionally to say, how would that feel to be in the state, in the space where survival is critical? Now, you mentioned this situation that your mom, your grandma, they did everything they could to provide for you to help you to survive, but you grew up having to battle to a certain degree. Walk us through what that looked like, and kind of walk us through the scenario with your mom and her boyfriend.
And so, I mean, to bring you back to that time, I have to bring you back with like just way, way back, right? I just have to bring you back so that you could understand like how I even, like how we got there.
Mm-hmm.
My father is a drill sergeant in the United States Army, right? So we were raised, I was a military brat most of my life. So most of my life I was raised traveling, living on these military bases. So I've seen a lot from there, and I developed a lot from there.
Yeah.
Right. These were good times in my life. These were great times. I knew that I wanted to be a pilot. I knew that I wanted to emulate my dad. I knew that I wanted to be a soldier. My mom and dad divorced. And when my mom and dad divorced, like very violently. It was just not a good situation for any of us. So my mom and dad divorced. We go back to what my mom knows, and what my mom knows is where she grew up, right? She grew up in the projects of New Orleans. And so my mom brought us there. So we were there for a spell. I knew that we were there for at least 2 years. We were there for a spell. I remember 6th, 7th grade. I'm in a Catholic school. I'm living in the projects in New Orleans. I'm going to a Catholic school. And I knew that my environment was just hell. It was guerrilla style warfare nearly every day.
Yeah.
And it was young kids at 16, 17 years old running around with AR-15s and these military style rifles. Still to this day, like this is the kind of material and the kind of stuff that these kids are playing with. And at 14, 15 years old, you know, you're called to a level of action that you've never seen before.
Yeah.
Like survival in the streets of America is a real thing.
Yeah.
You can't be a chump in America. I mean, you can look, you cannot be a chump in this place. You will get smashed around, right? And so growing up, having to survive means that you have to adapt to your environment. You know, you got to stand up in your environment. And that's what I remember having to do. I remember having to stand up, having to be a man inside of having to be a young man. I was a boy. I remember having to be a bigger boy than necessary to even make it through my natural day in my environment. So I was just always charged, you know? And so going through that, living through that day to day, having to balance your life with not getting robbed, not getting shot, not getting this, not getting that, not falling into all of the traps, bro. It was like a day-to-day, it was a day-to-day gravity that just weighed on me.
Yeah.
Right.
And you're a kid still. I mean, literally, you're a kid. You're middle school, junior high, not even high school yet.
I was a kid, man. I was a kid. So eventually, look, we raised ourselves out of that environment. But my mom was still cycling in and out of what she was going through. I think that she was very hurt because of her divorce from my dad. She was feeling a lot of pain because of it. So, you know, she was drinking and having fun and trying to be a young woman at that time in life. And I look back at my 30s. I'm 50. I can actually look back at my 30s. I'm turning 50, so I can look back at my 30s. That's why I say, like, now I have a whole new level of compassion for everybody involved in my personal situation, because I've grown to see so much shit in my life. And now I have to be the ultimate forgiver of everything, right? Yeah. You got to forgive all of that shit, all of these actions, man. And that's what I'm coming to terms with, right? That's why I'm here. I'm here because I want to tell you that no matter what you've seen in your life and how miserable your life was, you got to take the next step. And that's what this is about.
Yeah.
It's survival. It's survival one-on-one. If you want to have that life, you got to take the next step.
So you talked about that at a certain point, you guys moved forward into a slightly different life. Grandma was around, mom was around, but mom was struggling. Mom was dealing with alcohol. She was struggling with the maybe some doubts, maybe some depression, maybe some things that were related to the divorce, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I'll be 47 next month, and I look back to my early 30s. And when you're a kid, you think of your parents in their 30s. You're like, yeah, they're older, they're adults, they got it all figured out. That's not the case, right? I mean, I look back to my early 30s and think, oh my gosh, I wish I could go back and give that guy some advice. Yeah. So, mom's struggling.
Yes.
Walk us through what happened.
I think my mom was struggling. No, I don't think she was struggling. Fuck, it is what it is. My mom was struggling, and I think, and I, you know, what happens is when you're in these type of struggles, I think that that's what you attract.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that when you're not ready to date, you shouldn't date. You know, I think that my mom was attracting some negative energy, right? Just energy, right? And I don't like to, like, right now I'm at the stage of my life where I don't like to really label the energy anymore. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like right now I'm so much to a point where in my life, like whatever it was, it has to be dissolved. So the energy of whatever was going on, like it's so far removed from me. So my mom is in this state where she's dating a guy, and I just know that, you know, I just knew that things weren't right. I just could sense it, you know, but it was something that was just never really spoken about. Right.
Yeah.
We just never really said anything. I just remember, Steve, quite frankly, being fed up with everything that I had ever seen, fed up with all of the drama that goes on with survival, right? I've seen so much. I had seen so much. And
it's got to wear on you over time, right? I mean, if you're in survival mode every single day, it's got to wear on you over time. It's too much.
It kind of wears on you all the time.
Yeah.
Right?
Constant stream of stress.
Constant stream of stress.
Yeah.
So we're there, and I don't know how to get into the story, Steve.
So let's talk about it. So you see mom, and she's dating some people. She's struggling. You see her struggling. You're a young kid. You're 15, 16 years old at this time.
15, 16 years old, man.
15, 16-year-old adolescent brain, male brain, partially developed, right? I mean, we don't fully develop our brains into probably mid-20s, which means that the parts of the male brain that develop a little bit later than what the female brain does is the ability to emote in a healthy way. So that ability to understand emotions, to have self-awareness, to have emotional awareness, it's just not there. So typically what young men do is they take the emotions and they bury them down. They're not dumb. They're not stupid. They don't miss the cues. They don't miss the things that are going on around them. They feel it. They take that energy, they bury it down. And so then, from what I'm understanding from our conversations, you've got a constant stream of stress of surviving. You're surviving every single day as a 15, 16-year-old man. You are not only surviving, you're now looking at mom and you're saying, well, mom's going through some shit. This guy that she's with is constantly treating her poorly. You know, this is your mom. This is the woman that you never really talk bad about another person's mom, because that's mom, right? Everybody has a reverence for mom. The person that gives you life, you have reverence for. And so there's a protectiveness to that, especially if dad's not around. There's a protectiveness. There's this feeling that you want to take care of and protect mom because you're the one that's around. And Steve, so that's the feeling, if I'm understanding.
Yeah, man. I just remember needing to protect, feeling this need to protect.
Yeah.
To become this protector. And as humbly as I can say it, that's what I became. I became a fierce protector of my family. Today, I'm still a protector of my family. You know, I have to be a protector of my family. I love my wife. I love my son. Again, part of why I want to tell the story, and part of why this story is so hard for me to get into, the emotional tightrope that I have to walk to even tell the story, Steve. It's hard, you know. Yeah. It's hard. Yeah. It's hard. So thank you for working with me in that moment, because that was a moment, and I don't want to get emotional. You know, I really don't want to get too emotional.
Yeah. But no, I get you. But it's okay too. I mean, look, the reality is masculinity is extremely important in our lives. We've got to have that masculine, that dominance, that ability to protect. And I actually believe that true masculinity in its fully formed thought is not just the strength. It's not just the protectiveness. It's not just the toughness, the resilience. It's not just that. but it's
Right.
the ability to tap into the deeper emotional states as well. It's being a gentle man, right?
Mhm.
Two things, gentle
Yes.
and man. And man
Yes.
is protective. Man is provider. Man is, strong, resilient, all of those qualities. But gentle is the thing that's inside of us. Every man that I've ever met, if we sit down and we have a conversation about how they present, how they show up, there's a gentleness in all of us. There is a softness that balances out that hard, rough exterior. And so being a gentle man is it's part of our evolution. And so, here you are, 15, 16 years old. There are
Yeah.
parts of you that are waking up, the protective parts. They're also tapping into the parts of you that feel very deeply, the parts of you that are not comfortable. The parts that
Man,
are kind of the soft belly of
man,
the
I,
turtle, right?
yeah. It felt like, look, the Orishas, these great spirits were just fucking
Yeah,
growling up inside of me.
yeah,
When I was 16, I had no control of like my emotional state.
yeah,
I was just a young guy. I was pretty smart. I was always like this little poet kind of guy.
yeah, yeah,
I was always very good looking, very charming. The women
right,
loved me. I was doing great in school.
yeah,
I was a good kid. We had that great middle class look.
mm-hmm,
We
yeah,
struggled. We got out of it. My mom, despite all of the everything, I have to tell you that my mom was a very beautiful person, very stylish. The way that she wore her clothes and the way that she did things, it just makes you laugh, man. It just makes you laugh because she was just this beautiful person, and she just enjoyed life to the fullest. Our
yeah,
house was the party house. Our house was the party house. It was, where it was always lit, but at the same time, sometimes it was a little bit too much.
yeah.
You know, and that's all. And that's what it was. But let me give you a quick segue, man. Let me give you a quick segue, right? I found myself I found myself one day. I found myself one day like in tears.
Mm.
Okay. I was in tears. And I realized that it was morning. I was asleep. I woke up.
Interesting.
I was in tears.
Yeah. Okay.
I had cycled back into that night in my head. And everything came crashing down on me. That anxiety, the pain of that night, everything came crashing down on me. And that was probably a week before I had an opportunity to even hear your name.
Mm.
Right? The weight of that night came crashing down upon me. And let me tell you, man, it awoken something in me. It awoken something in me. It awoken like a new level of want and a new level of need and a new level of freedom, bro. I was in so much pain from my sleep, right?
Yeah.
Waking up into the day. And I went about my morning and I worked out and I stayed quiet. And that's when I made the decision. That's when it came to my realization that I just had to tell this story, right?
Yeah.
So Steve, with all of that information, everything that we've just talked about, right? One night I'm walking home, I'm a young kid, I'm walking home. And I could have been coming from anywhere. That's nebulous. I could have been coming from my aunt's house. My aunt may have dropped me off. I don't know, but it was something very nebulous. So I'm walking home. As I'm walking home, I'm approaching the house. My mom's boyfriend's car is there. The window is rolled down just enough for me to see the gun on the seat.
Yeah. His gun.
It was his gun.
His gun.
It was his gun. So I'm walking home. His gun is on the seat of the car. It's on the passenger seat of the car.
Tribe Called Quest in your ears, right?
Tribe Called Quest in my ears. I'm listening to some music because that was the guy that I was forming.
Yeah.
These were formative years in my life, right? Where I'm getting all of that beatnik poetry stuff, right? I'm realizing that I live in the city of New Orleans and all of these great jazz musicians are living around me and all of these important people and all of these influences are around me. And I'm beginning to put together the picture of the man that I wanted to be. Yeah. Some of all of this is coming to be. I take the gun. I go inside. My mom, her boyfriend, they're entertaining, right? Drinks, they're entertaining. You know what it looks like. Yeah. I couldn't give them the gun. So I take the gun, I go upstairs, put the gun away. I go to sleep. When I wake up, it's just loud. It's just a loud eruption. It's my mom screaming. It's the worst sound in the world. I run downstairs.
And you're woken up really by the sound, right? I mean, you didn't just naturally wake up. You're woken up by the sound.
Woken up by the sound.
Yep.
And this is why things are deep, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Things are deep because you can leap out of a state. You can leap out of a state into another state like that. Yeah. In 1 point second, bro, you will make a mistake that will change the course of your life. Hopping out of states, that's a problem. It's a problem. Drunk states, high states, all of these different states of mind that we try to run to. It doesn't help us. It doesn't do us any good. You have to stay in that present state.
Yeah.
Okay. I wake up. I hear my mom screaming. She's being overpowered by a broomstick. And the soldier in me takes over. Mm-hmm. Something else in me takes over.
The protective piece.
The protective piece takes over. And I shoot and I kill this poor man. And I say poor man because, again, I'm turning 50. This is important. This is important knowledge for everybody out there. I'm older than everybody in that situation. I'm now older than everybody in the situation. Mm-hmm. So I'm looking back at this situation like, bro, nobody was in the right that night.
Yeah.
Nobody was in the right, right? And I remember this poem, Invictus. Mm. And that's what I knew I had to become in order to get through this shit.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Because in a blink of a second, I was charged as an adult. I was charged with second-degree murder. I was not given a fair look at this, right? This is a domestic case gone wrong, and it was all fucked up. And so now I found myself 16 years old, in handcuffs, in shackles, in jail. That's how I found myself. And in this country, you're guilty until you're proven broke. And thank God that my family wasn't broke. Thank God we were far from rich, but thank God we wasn't broke. And I bond out. And I fought this case from the outside. Okay. Now I get out. I'm 16 years old with a second-degree murder charge on me.
Yeah.
A felony. I can't go back to school, not back to the school that I wanted to go to. I'm at a point in my life where I was choosing to go to better schools, get a better education, right? I was formulating all of this before this happened. So now my whole trajectory has changed, but I knew that I had to take control. And that's what I did. I went into overdrive and I formulated a plan for myself. And I just stuck to the goddamn plan, Steve.
Yeah.
And I just never looked back. I never looked back, Steve. I never looked back. I worked my ass off. I've dedicated my life to recovering the body, to healing the body, to taking care of the body. I've dedicated my life to forgiving myself, forgiving people around me. I've became a very impassioned, compassionate, humble man.
Yeah.
You know, I've never, like Steve, I've never wanted to shine bright. I was always afraid to shine. I was always covered. I was always wearing hats, and I just never wanted to be a light in the world. I never wanted to share my story. Ever, Steve. I never thought about sharing this. And I have some pretty good friends that are advocates. They speak in prisons. They speak to people. They do a lot of stuff. Steve, I never, ever wanted to share my story. And I mean that from the bottom of my heart. But I just had to let it go, because I know what it means to ask God for forgiveness. I know what it means to have come from a really shitty place in life. I really do. And I've done, look, and I, Steve, I have not been the best human, but I forgive myself and I forgive others, and I ask others to forgive me. And a part of what I wanted to do today, Steve, with your podcast is I wanted to show myself, show the people around me, honor my family, honor everybody around me with a gift of showing them what it is for me to truly attempt to lift this weight off of me in such a powerful and inspiring way.
Yeah.
And hopefully that this gives someone out there a measure, some fucking oomph to fucking make it through the next day. Bro. Fuck. Come on, man.
There's a few things that really not only stand out from your story right now that we just talked about, but when you and I first talked. Number one, you were a kid. We talk about
Absolutely.
right. Yeah, you were a kid, and you made a decision, a second decision based on protection, based on being in this stressful circumstance and situation. I think back to when I was a 16-year-old, I was a dumbass. I mean, I still am, but I'm less of a dumbass now. But you're a kid that goes through and deals with this situation in a way that was it, right? You're a kid. The second thing that really hit me when we first talked and you told me the story, you said to me the same thing you said right now. I took this poor man's life. And that hit me pretty deep, because that speaks volumes to your understanding, not only of what you did, but that this was a man that he was poor in many respects, right? Anybody that is beating another woman does not have wealth of emotional stability, doesn't have wealth of spiritual health, doesn't have wealth of anything. There's a poor man. And so in many, many respects, this is a poor man. But also, as you said before, you've lived another almost 20 years past what any of the players in the story were. And you've seen over the past 20 years what your life has been like and how you've evolved. And I think one of the things that really resonated with me when you and I talked is you said that man couldn't experience anything beyond because I took his life. And I think that speaks volumes to the way that you see the situation, the way you see yourself, to the way that you see the world, your part in the world, and
absolutely
forgiveness, right? That's probably the last thing that really stands out to me is this idea of forgiveness. And I couldn't agree more. Forgiving yourself is where life starts. When you forgive yourself, when you take a step back and you forgive yourself, you're now open to see the future. Like when you told me your story, and I thought back to some of the time that we had spent together, and I thought about the conversation as we were having it, and I thought, ah, shit, man, you were a kid. Like, yeah, there's no judgment here. Like,
yeah.
I mean, even just hearing the circumstances, the situation, like, even if you were in your 20s, I'd probably think the same thing, right? So there's no judgment, but yet far too often we look at our life and we say, look at that decision I made, back here at this time. For fuck's sake, give yourself a break, and I'm not saying that to you. I'm saying that in general. As human beings, we look back and we think that we were supposed to have shit figured out at a certain time in life because of a number on the calendar. No, we grow in many ways. And when we look back and we say, oh, yeah, that happened. And it happened because of these things, these circumstances, these situations. Now I've learned from it. I've grown. I've evolved. I've moved past it. And so that idea of having some compassion is so critical. Like we don't move forward without compassion. It just doesn't happen. Forgiveness. And really compassion to me is the act of forgiveness followed up by the continued act of love for self. That's where compassion is, right? If somebody does something to me, I can forgive them, which is essentially just saying, okay, yeah, it's water under the bridge. But compassion means that there is an act on a consistent basis where I'm going to reach out and I'm going to lift up that person. And if that person is my former self, if that person is another human being, then compassion takes action. And I think that's one of the biggest things that resonated with me as you and I talked about this story. You made a choice, but then you also made multiple choices over the years to move yourself into a different direction. You referenced Invictus, and I want to, for our listeners, I think unfortunately some of the greats are just not read, taught, before, or I mean, in this day and age. And I want to read that for our listeners, and then come back to how you've crafted your life moving forward. So this is actually one of my favorite poems. This is probably in my top 3 or top 4 favorite poems by William Ernest Henley. Out of the night that covers me, black as the pit from pole to pole, I thank whatever gods may be for my unconquerable soul. In the fell clutch of circumstance, I have not winced nor cried aloud. Under the bludgeonings of chance, my head is bloody but unbowed. Beyond this place of wrath and tears looms but the horror of the shade. And yet the menace of the years finds and shall find me unafraid. It matters not how straight the gate or how charged the punishments of the scroll. I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul. Now, I would encourage our listeners to go read the story behind that poem. It will cut you deeper than even just hearing those words. But Nakia, you are a representation of that poem. You have created your own life. You have been the master of your fate and the captain of your soul. You didn't let one decision define you, and you started to move in a way that became who you wanted to be. That man that you were envisioning before this happened, you have become that man. And in life, too often, we think that when something happens, that is the end of our story, but it's not. That's one part. The story's not over. You still got another 50 years, probably, right? I mean, the way you live, I mean, you look like you're in your 20s, so you might have another 60, 70 years. Might outlive me.
That's the goal.
Talk about some of the choices that you've made throughout your life that have moved you towards being the evolved man that you are now.
Steve, the most important choice, the most important choice is loving myself. Like really, really, really realizing, like, shit, man, I gotta love myself, because if I don't love myself, nobody else is gonna do it.
Yeah, it is.
And then once, that's a fucking choice.
Yeah,
and
choice,
so then
choice to do it or choice to not do it, right? I mean, it's a choice.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so then from there, it's like, if you're loving yourself, everything else has to abide by that philosophy.
Yep.
Looking good, feeling good, eating good, working out, the proper sleep, working out, even the way that we choose to work and earn our money. All of that affects our health and our wellness. Health is wealth. A lot of these lifestyles that people are living, it's not really providing what they need to be systematically healthy. And you can kind of see that in certain things.
Yeah.
I live a life to where I am systematically healthy. I've learned to edit out a lot of things and only use what I need. I'm a true Spartan when it comes to lifestyle choices. I believe that
I love that.
The fewer ingredients, the better.
Yep.
You know, and that's the way that I run my business. That's the way that I run everything. I try to, I'm a solopreneur, so I'm by myself. Mm-hmm. I built the practice to where I could sustain a great lifestyle off of what I make, right? And I don't live beyond my means. So I am happy in my financial structure. I'm happy because I have a great community of friends and a great network of people that are around me. These are things and all of the actions that I've taken over the years to ensure that I'm healthy, that I am functioning at maximum capacity. I have people in my life. So community, loving yourself, being financially stable, and being able to take care of everything that you need. These are the fundamental ingredients to anything. You know, I own my house. I mean, you know, life is good. So there are direct implications to loving yourself, forgiving yourself, and moving forward.
I want to talk a little bit about the moving forward piece. I mean, you made a lot of conscious choices. I haven't been through what you've been through, you know,
yes.
and I have not, and so I can't pretend to say I can totally empathize, because my growing up was different. I was in that middle-class household. I didn't really have to think about protection, and the stress that I had was a different type of stress. So I haven't been through that. A few years back, there was, I remember I was running a health club, and we got a call that a gentleman, we called it a code 100, and that's essentially where someone is down, they're passed out. This gentleman had an aneurysm, and I got on the scene, and one of the trainers that worked for me was already there and trying to assess the situation. And we jumped in and we started to do CPR. And this man was already gone before he had hit the ground, but we, banged on his chest, did the stuff that we needed to until the paramedics showed up, and he passed away. I didn't sleep for about a year afterwards because the visceral feeling, the tactile, all of the senses would wake me up in the middle of the night, feeling his body, seeing this scene, the horrific nature of experiencing death in that moment. It shocked me, and it was something that it took me a long time to reconcile, and I went through and questioned every single step I took along the way. And I remember about a year or so later when the next gentleman had a heart attack. And I went to go work on him. And all of a sudden, his face and his body turned into the face and the body of the gentleman that had passed away before. And I remember just getting tears in my eyes. And I looked at him and I screamed. And I said, "You're not fucking dying on me, because I'm not sure I can go through this again." And the one thing that really hit me, especially after the first one, was just questioning all my choices. Did I make the right decision? What if I had gotten there faster? What if I had pounded a little bit harder? What if I had done more, right? I questioned all of my choices. I can only imagine, relative to what you've been through, how difficult, because I sat in some shit for a really long time. It took me a long time to overcome. I can only imagine what it took to sit in the shit, to deal with the milieu of emotions, the guilt, the shame, the frustration, the sadness, all of those different things. You've crafted a beautiful life for yourself. But I want to make sure we recognize this has come from a lot of internal work that you've done, because there's got to be a lot of shit. And while I've not been through what you've been through, I can only imagine, based on my own life experience and how difficult certain things were, what it would feel like to be in that situation. I recently had to protect my family from an intruder. Someone broke into our house, about a year or so ago, in the middle of the morning, early in the morning, and I had to protect my family from this gentleman. And everything turned out fine. But I know that instinct that you're talking about, that literally killer instinct. And I remember when I saw him and I knew what was happening, and I thought to myself, I'm not dying here, but he might if he goes towards my family. And if I have to die, then I'm going to do it, and he's coming with me, because I will not let him go towards my family. And I will not let him inflict on my family what he potentially could inflict on my family. And as soon as that instinct hit me, I lost everything in my mind. I didn't know, time, space, it all disappeared. And all I remember was hearing my own voice saying, "What the fuck are you doing in my house? Get your fucking ass out of here." And I probably said that 500 times in the space of the minute or two that it took to get this guy out. And so that instinct, I can resonate with. The pain, I can't pretend to know what you went through, but I know it was deep. I know it was heavy. And part of the reason why I know it was deep and heavy is just because of the man that you are. And when I first met you, I could feel the depth. I could feel the stuff that you were going through. I could feel the fact that you were doing some deep work. Talk about unpacking it.
Yeah.
What does that look like?
Man, the deep work begins for me. First thing in the morning, the deep work begins as soon as I wake up. But no, in all realness, it's taking some very concentrated therapy, some very
Yeah.
concentrated work with different type of shaman. It's taken some very deep conversations with well sought out individuals from all religious types. I've
Yeah.
spoken to rabbis, I've spoken to imams, I've spoken to every single person that I could possibly reach to offer me, just guidance and perspective, right?
Yeah.
And over the years, the deep work that I've done has given me a lot of resolve. It's given me a lot of clarity. It's allowed me to find balance.
Yeah.
To find balance. Recently I've had some very close friends die. One was by suicide, other by a drug overdose, which could be kind of construed as a suicide. These things deeply rocked me, and I'm like, I know who you are, and I know the pain and the anguish that you was going through, but somehow, some way, I thought that they had enough strength to make it through a day, make it through another day. And for some reason, they didn't. And I'm here to kind of like just bear witness to people that like have faith in yourself, have love in yourself, and make it to the other day. Go and do the deep work. Don't be lazy. Don't be fucking lazy with yourself. And there's a lot of lazy fucking people out there.
Yeah.
That don't want to do the work. That they know they're fucking hurt. They know that they're bothersome, and you know that you're a general miserable ass person.
Yeah.
And you got to go and do the work. I knew all of that stuff about me, and I had to go and dig down in myself and just do the work. You got to do the work if you want to see a better day.
I think I think your life is a great example of doing the work. I think this is something you and I talked about before, that far too many people today are not just ending their life via suicide, but they're ending their growth and progression because they're getting drug addicted, or there's alcohol, or they just stop growing and progressing. Right? They're ending an aspect of their life. They're stopping with their soul progression, or they choose to end their life. And your story is something that I believe has significant power, where people can say, I'm going through some shit right now, but there's always another day. There's always something better in the future.
There's always something better. There's always something better. And I mean, Steve, there's always something better. And, the issue with stories like this, right? You have this component of domestic violence. You have this component of gun violence.
Yeah, right.
These are very tough subjects, and there's very few people that have made it out of these type of things and have been successful, right? It's right. Very few of us that can mentor and help people, or even provide some sort of relief to people that has been through things like that. And the second part of why I'm here is to kind of broadcast that there are guys like me out here that have been through a lot, that have a lot to offer to some of these younger generations that's coming up, that can't quite put a finger on what they're dealing with, right? There's a lot of young men that's coming up, and they're finding themselves in environments and brand new income brackets and all of this new stuff. And they're from where I'm from, right? There's a lot of young men that's from where I'm from that's getting these great opportunities, whether they're athletes, actors, producers, CEOs, but they're coming from similar environments, and they have this just dark shadow of this stuff on them, and they might not know how to communicate it. They might not know how to deal with it, but they just have to know that they can always take the next step. And guys like you and us, guys like you and I, that's why we're here. Your coaching program, your ability to do the type of stuff and the type of work that you do, this all exists on such a niche level that, you know, guys like us, we have to come together and we have to kind of broadcast.
Yes.
How we're working, right? Like my work is extremely deep. It's extremely private. It's very boutique-y, the way that I exist. And I don't advertise a lot. I don't talk a lot about who I am and what I do. I try to just stay humble. But this kind of symbiotic relationships and broadcasting, Steve, is exactly what we need to reach, I feel, more niche people that are looking for a more boutique style of interaction with a guy like me, with a therapist like me.
Yeah. There's another quote from one of my favorite authors that had popped into my head as you're talking. What lies behind us and what lies before us are tiny matters compared to what lies within us. Ralph Waldo Emerson. I love that quote because I hope, now I tend to set goals that are way too big, but I hope 1 million people listen to this episode. I hope 1 million young men hear this episode. I hope 1 million mothers hear this episode. I hope 1 million fathers hear this episode. I hope 1 million people who are not present as fathers hear this episode and say, I need to be present. I hope 1 million people hear this and say, what can I do? How can I show up?
Yes.
Right? Because the person right now that is struggling, the person that is dealing with the difficulty, believes that the past is what defines them and their future is non-existent. But what lies behind us and what lies before us are tiny matters compared to what lies within us. And really the key to evolving past challenge, decisions that we've had, all of these things that we talked about today, it all lies in tapping into that peace that is deep within us and then learning the knowledge, skills, and abilities in order to move forward. It's you're inspiring, my friend. Like I want to tell you thank you. I think I've said that a few times before we even got on, but
yeah, you have.
Thank you.
But thank you. I mean, the feeling's mutual, Steve. Listen, man, I knew that you would have only done the most right justice by me and by this story. That's why I was able to come to you. I knew that I could trust and respect you, and I thank you for our continued friendship and all of our continued growth and conversations, because we're going to be able to unpack some stuff. Because listen, man, there's a lot of statistics that we can talk about. There's a lot of things that we can drill down into. We don't have to really get into that today. There's this whole thing about the justice system one day, Steve, I would like to have a conversation with you about, man, because
we need to have that.
We just have to have that talk. And, you know, today, I don't know how long ago it's been, but our country, we have a big problem with these guns. There's always people dying, these deaths, they make the news. But one day, Steve, we're going to have a very deep conversation about the gun violence kind of stuff too, man. This stuff is just, it's incredible. It's incredible the amount of havoc that this is wreaking on people. And my story about gun violence is as heartfelt and as hurt as it is, bro, it pales in comparison probably to some of the stuff that's going on in the breach right now. So it's important that we, our tribe and our community, that we kind of like stick together, and we try to bring as much resolve as we can to some of this stuff.
Yeah, beautifully put. Yeah. And I think that, again, I want to thank you for coming on and sharing your story, being open about it, and controlling the narrative of it, to say, hey, this is my story, and I'm going to tell it, and I'm going to tell the story in the way that is the most authentic, the most truthful, the most transparent, and in a way that just by the nature of doing it that way is inspiring as hell. I mean, I feel honored. I feel grateful that you have shared this with me, shared it with our listeners. And like I said, I'm looking for this to have 1 million downloads so that everybody can hear and be inspired by it. I want to read, as we come to the end, one more time, that poem by William Ernest Henley, because I believe that he wrote this based on your life. Out of the night that covers me, black as the pit from pole to pole, I thank whatever gods may be for my unconquerable soul. In the fell clutch of circumstance, I have not winced nor cried aloud. Under the bludgeonings of chance, my head is bloody but unbowed. Beyond this place of wrath and tears looms but the horror of the shade, and yet the menace of the years finds and shall find me unafraid. It matters not how straight the gate, how charged with punishments of the scroll. I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul. Nakia Caesh, you are the captain of your soul. For people who may want to connect with you, what's the best way for them to find you?
I'm at All Things Stretch Theory. Stretch Theory is the name of the business. I'm here in Atlanta, Georgia, beautiful neighborhood, Cascade. The Instagram is Stretch Theory. I'm there.
Love it.
I'm there. So please reach out to me and give me a shout out if you can.
Awesome. And we'll link all those in the notes of the episode. Again, Nakia, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your beautiful story with us. I hope you, our listeners, took a significant amount of wisdom and inspiration from this story. I know I'm walking out of this conversation, even though I know the story, I've heard it, and have had the deep conversations about it with Nakia. I'm walking away in a more enlightened way, and I feel a lot more depth to it as well. So remember, folks, that it does take time and consistency to evolve, but first you have to disrupt. And now it's time for you to get out there and evolve.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Evolve Podcast. Follow us on your favorite podcast app, and if you haven't done so, please give us a rating. As an independent podcast, it really helps us get more reach. This podcast is part of our mission to help millions of people evolve into the best versions of themselves. Please check out our coaching services at evolve-cast.com or pick up some of our Evolve merch. Until next time, keep evolving.